It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're wrapping up the month of July 2004, July 30th to be exact, and we've got 6 movies to talk about, and they all vary in quality and just some of the most notorious. Some of these movies are the most notoriously bad movies of these directors' careers. Some of them are actually very good. In fact, one of the movies we'll talk about was actually in my list of my top 30 favorite movies for the longest period of time until the last couple of years. But we'll get to those. We'll get to that one a little bit later. But before we do, we got 6 films to look at. We have a lot of films to get to. I'm already wasting your time as it is, so let's go ahead and get started. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. Some people consider this to be the beginning of the downfall for M. Night Shyamalan, and I would say Signs was that in terms of a creative aspect, but that was a big commercial and critical success, so what the hell do I know? But I digress. This film is about a village whose population lives in fear of creatures inhabiting the woods beyond it, referring to them as those who we don't speak of. And this is where M. Night Shyamalan gets very pretentious. I mean, you were starting to see a lot of it in Signs in particular, where a lot of the characters were talking so quietly. It was like ASMR before ASMR became the norm. But they were all these very one-note characters that didn't really have a lot of backgrounds in general. Like, they didn't really do anything except just explain. And a lot of it is in this movie, and we know nothing about these creatures, and when we do get to see these creatures finally in their full capacity, needless to say, this is where the twist endings of M. Night Shyamalan really start to take a goddamn turn, because this is just where the end of this movie is so ridiculously stupid and unbelievably terrible. It's just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, that was my first feeling when I watched this, when I watched the twist ending for this for the first time. It's just like, are you freaking serious right now? So it's not even a good twist in general. It would also help too if the movie was actually good before it, but it's not. It's a complete waste of a lot of talent. Bryce Dallas Howard, Joaquin Phoenix, Adrian Brody, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, Brendan Gleeson. And like I said, it was the movie that really was the beginning of the downfall for M. Night Shyamalan, because that streak he had with Disney came to an end, and Disney basically said after this was with his next movie, we ain't releasing that movie, and that movie became Lady in the Water, and then we finally got to see why when Warner Brothers put it out, and needless to say, it does not get any better from there. This was the beginning of that downfall between 2004 until 2013, and then once he teamed up with Jason Blum, his career slowly but surely returned back on top again, but yeah, prepare yourself for the worst of the worst from M. Night Shyamalan, because we're going to get to a lot of those movies coming up in the next couple of years here. But The Village, it's definitely a bad movie, man, but not the worst thing he's done, trust me. We still got a few movies to go before we get to that point, but yeah, The Village is pretty bad. I don't think I really need to explain why. I think most people have said why it's not a good movie. Yeah, it's not a very good film at all. So, with that said, on to the next movie, and that is the star-studded remake of The Manchurian Candidate, directed by Jonathan Demme of Silence of the Lambs. This is The Manchurian Candidate. This is, of course, the remake of the 1962 movie, which starred Frank Sinatra, and this is based off, of course, of the novel by Richard Condon. And it stars Denzel Washington as Bennett Marco, a tenacious, virtuous soldier, Lee Schreiber as Raymond Shaw, who's a U.S. representative from New York, manipulated into becoming a vice presidential candidate. John Voight stars as U.S. Senator Tom Jordan, who's a challenger for vice president, and Meryl Streep is Eleanor Prentice Shaw, U.S. Senator and Raymond's manipulative, ruthless mother. And while the name of the novel in the earlier film is still in here, the difference is that there's a significance on Manchurian. In the original, the protagonist is captured in the Korean War and brainwashed by the Chinese army in Manchuria, and in the 2004 film, when the Korean War was replaced by the Gulf War, Manchurian is instead used as the name of a sinister multinational company. This is one of those ones that remakes that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot, especially when you consider that Paramount had the infamously bad Stepford Wives come out the same year, and this was right around the time when they were going remake crazy. This is definitely one of the better ones. I think boasted by the fact that you've got this top-tier talent of stars. I mean, Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, Lee Schreiber, John Voight, directed by Jonathan Demme, who really needed a good movie after the last couple films he had done were not that great. Beloved and The Truth About Charlie. And this is a film that definitely really shows why he's such a good director. And this is just a really good modernized retelling of the original film. It does a lot that's completely different from the original film, but also stays tried and true to the original film, but adapts it into modern times, and it works really well. I don't think I need to say too much more about Denzel Washington. I've praised the guy enough on this show and on this channel, on this website in general, because I consider him the greatest actor of all time. I mean, he really is the best actor I've ever seen. I mean, I've talked about his work in the past. He gives another great performance in this movie. Meryl Streep, I think, is really good. And Lee Schreiber really is very good as Raymond Shaw. He's very commanding in here. And this is what makes Lee Schreiber such a good actor. And we've seen it in other great things, like Ray Donovan and a lot of other movies and shows that we've talked about. But this is a movie that really, it definitely delivers on modernizing the classic movie, but not feeling like a carbon copy of the original movie, or trying to do something that's so completely different like The Stepford Wives, by taking it as a dark comedy instead of the serial thriller that the original one was. No, this movie does its job very well. It's a great remake. It distances itself from the original, but stays tried and true to the original, while adapting it into modern times. It's got a strong cast to make it work. It's very tension-filled. It's very intense. It can get scary at times, too. Lee Schreiber, like I said, is very commanding in the role. Denzel Washington is great. I mean, not much more I could say about this movie that hasn't already been said. It's a very underrated little gem of a film. I mean, it was a hit when it came out, but it's been mostly largely forgotten. It's a movie that I do recommend checking out. Even if you've never seen the original Manchurian Candidate, definitely check this one out. It's definitely worth watching just for the performances, the great visuals appeal of the film, and it is very tension-filled and it works very well for its own good. I highly recommend it, The Manchurian Candidate. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to one of the more notable movies that actually turned out to be really good. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. And that commercial there is probably one of the reasons why this wasn't a big box office hit when it came out, which is interesting because the trailer for it was actually pretty good, and the movie itself is a really great film. It was part of that great stretch of comedies we had in 2004 that really did not get them. It was one of the few ones that really didn't get the proper respect it deserved. But this isn't like Envy, where it's something that I feel like has gotten better with time. This was a movie that was really good from the get-go and got very well received by critics in general, but people just didn't go to see it the first time around. You have a story here that has a man, Harold and Kumar, played by John Cho and Cal Penn. They go on this adventure to a White Castle restaurant after smoking marijuana, and you wouldn't think that it wouldn't be that big of a deal in general, but the way they take this into an adventure that's so grand and so grandiose in general, like, it just works very well here, and the film does a very good job of giving these two guys really great chemistry. Cal Penn and John Cho work off each other so well in general. Like, Cal Penn's not playing the same character he played in Van Wilder. He's a completely different character altogether. It works very well to his advantage, and seeing John Cho, who had previously before this had like a small role in American Pie, and then did stuff like Off Center, which was a criminally underrated WB show that was axed after just a couple of seasons. Like, he gets a chance to really show his potential as a leading actor, but a lot of great performances in this movie, not just between the two of them, but you also have Paula Garces, who was in Clock Stoppers, who I thought was really good in here, David Krumholtz, Eddie K. Thomas, Chris Maloney, Ryan Reynolds also appears in this, so does Fred Willard, Anthony Anderson, with one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie, where he just tears the restaurant up. Come on, Boogie, let's burn this motherfucker down. Malin Ackerman's also in the movie as well. But of course, everyone remembers the most memorable thing about the movie in general is Neil Patrick Harris, who, I mean, this was my introduction to Neil Patrick Harris. I never saw Doogie Howser as a kid, but man, when I saw him in this movie, and he was easily one of the funniest things about the movie, and essentially led to his renaissance as an actor as a whole, because the following year he did Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother, which is still a great show, despite the ending not being that great. And everything that I always get excited to see anything Neil Patrick Harris is in now. I mean, the guy is a terrific entertainer, man. Like, and it's because of these movies that I think people really saw him as not just Doogie Howser. I mean, this is a guy that is so funny, so clever, so entertaining to watch, and the fact that he's gay and and this film is completely different compared to what Neil Patrick Harris in real life it is as a person. Like, these movies in general, it's freaking amazing, man. It's a really good movie, and it's also very topical too. It does a very good job of subverting the stereotypes of like racial and and racial comedic setups in general here. Something that I think the sequel failed to do, Escape from Guantanamo Bay, even though I thought that one was okay, it definitely was not as good as this film is. I mean, this movie is really fun, and just the whole idea that all this is happening is they're trying to go to a White Castle restaurant. I live up in Western Pennsylvania. We don't have too many White Castles around here, unfortunately. So I've never had the opportunity to try White Castle, but watching these guys eat White Castle in this movie just made me really want to go to a real White Castle restaurant and see if these burgers are actually as good as they make them in this movie. I mean, yeah, I could go to my grocery store and get the frozen ones, but the frozen ones are not. But those ones are usually never that good. Plus, I always hear stories about how you put them in the microwave and sometimes they're cooked, but on one side, but then on the other side they're not. But no, the end of this movie, when they finally get to that destination, to the White Castle, and you see them eating all those burgers and fries, just like, it makes you want to get it. I mean, really made me want to go and get some White Castle, even though there's not that many around here, unfortunately. But the movie really is very funny. It's very clever. Directed by the guy who did Dude, Where's My Car, which is kind of like a much smarter version of Dude, Where's My Car, even though Dude, Where's My Car is still a very funny movie. This is like the opposite of that, which is very smart, very clever, very stupid at times, very funny stuff. What more can I say, man? Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. I'm so glad it did find the following that it did afterwards, because it led to a sequel after that. And then probably the best overall is and then a nice return to form with the third film, the Christmas movie in 3D, which I think is definitely better than Escape from Guantanamo Bay. We'll get to Guantanamo Bay when we get to the 2008 season. The 2008 season, April 2008 is when it came out, so we'll get to that movie eventually. But Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, a classic movie, a great underrated comedy. Another great comedy from the year 2004. I mean, this was another great year for comedy in general, man. And this was another one of those examples of that. And this could be considered a comedy, too. Maybe not the way they intended it to be, but Thunderbirds. Yeah, the Thunderbirds TV show was known for having wooden characters because they were made with puppets. This movie's not supposed to have wooden characters that are played by live actors, and I think that was one of their biggest mistakes with this particular film. This is, of course, based off of the 1960s TV series Thunderbirds, of course, created by Gary Anderson. And this time it follows the Hood, who traps international rescue leader Jeff Tracy, played by Bill Paxton, and 4 of his sons on board the damaged Thunderbird 5 to steal the other Thunderbird's vehicles and commit heists that IR would be blamed for, prompting Jeff's youngest son Alan and his friends Tintin and Fernot. Tintin's actually, I believe, played by Vanessa Hudgens in one of her early film roles. Yeah, Vanessa Hudgens plays her. This is directed by Jonathan Frakes, too, so it doesn't have a bad thing behind it. This is also written by Michael McCullers, who did the Austin Powers movies, William Osborne. We've talked about some of the movies that he's been involved in. He wrote Twins, he wrote Twins and GoldenEye, but then he also did stuff like Short Time and Stop Where My Mom Will Shoot, or Dr. Jekyll and Miss Hyde, The Scorpion King, Fat Slags. Yeah, not the best movies in general here. And Ben Kingsley is in the movie as the bad guy. One of Ben Kingsley's many, many bad career choices that he made around this time. Obviously, they were trying to go for the Spy Kids thing. This was still around the time when Spy Kids was still very relevant. We've talked about several other movies that have tried to copy the Spy Kids formula, but failed to succeed in those. The Agent Cody Banks 2s, Catch That Kid, and now Thunderbirds here. And I think the biggest problem with the film in general is the fact that this would have worked better as what the show was. I mean, a stop-motion TV series with super marionette puppets and scale model visual effects. Trying to do this as a big-budget adventure, I think, was really the wrong call here. And even then, it's not really that big of a budget of $57 million. That's cheap compared to compared to most blockbusters. And it couldn't even make that back in general. It only brought in $28 million. And, it's funny because the creator of the show, Gary Anderson, criticized the film, chastised it, but his wife praised it as a great tribute to the series. I would have loved to see how that relationship would have gone went after that, but yeah, the movie itself is just pretty lame. It's a lackluster kids film that's trying so hard it's trying to be more Spy Kids than actual Thunderbirds. I mean, it just didn't work as a whole. Just a waste of a good cast overall here. Bill Paxton, Anthony Edwards, Ben Kingsley, just just a really, really bad film in general. Just a really bad film. And it really hurt Jonathan Frakes' career as a director, because this was the last movie, I believe. Well, this was the last big theatrical release he directed. He did do some Librarian movies for TNT, but other than that, his film career pretty much died after this. But yeah, it's just a bad film. It's not really that great. It's not really engaging. It's just boring. It's a dull, boring film that really does not have anything of value to it whatsoever. It just feels like a complete waste of time. Just a bad film. So, let's go from a bad film to my favorite film of the whole weekend. For the longest time, it was actually in my top 30 favorite films of all time, but that has since changed, and I'll talk more about that after I show you a little bit of the trailer for Garden State. You have Zach Braff here playing a 26-year-old actor-waiter who returns to his hometown in New Jersey after his mother dies. And Braff based the film off of his own real-life experiences. This was his directorial debut after the years he had been on Scrubs. This was when his career was starting to begin to take off as in the world of film. Because the following year he'd be in Chicken Little, he'd do The Last Kiss after that. And needless to say, this film unfortunately doesn't... This film's a great movie, but unfortunately after that, there was a long period of time where he really did not do anything of noteworthiness in terms of his film career. And it's a shame, because the movie really is fantastic. Like I said before, this was a movie that for the longest time was in my top 30 favorite films of all time, before films like the Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse took this movie out of it. But it's a movie I always remember seeing the first trailers and just like, what is this movie that I'm seeing here? And when I finally got around to seeing it, I'm so glad that I did, because it just is a fantastically put together film. A great, solid romantic dramedy that benefits from this great ensemble that includes Braff, Natalie Portman, Peter Sarsgaard, Ian Holm. It shows off the potential for what he could do as a writer and director that, unfortunately, like I said, never really took off after that. I mean, his film career in general really didn't take off. And, when he finally returned to direct a movie, Wish You Were Here, which actually came out 10 years after this movie did, I was so excited to see it because I had seen what he'd done with Garden State, and unfortunately he just never really could live up to that hype that he had with this movie, because what he did with this was just really groundbreaking. It's a visual wonder to look at. You also have a great... the cast also includes people like Gene Smart, Jackie Hoffman, Method Man, Ron Liebman, Dennis O'Hare, Jim Parsons, Ann Dowd, Armando Riesco. Just a fantastic, fantastic cast in general. A visual style that is just so incredibly well put together, as this very unique style of... He has this very unique style of handling this film in general. It's just a really good movie, a really fun, entertaining film that showcases what Zach Braff's capabilities of as a director could be at that time. When the movie came out, it was actually interesting that Natalie Portman's character, who I thought was really good, was seen as kind of the manic pixie dream girl trope. Now, if you don't know what that is, I didn't know what it is until I actually looked the movie up a long time ago when I was writing my written review for this. The whole idea is that it's a stock character type in fiction, usually depicted as a young woman with eccentric personality quirks who serves as the romantic interest for male protagonists, which, I mean, isn't that what most romantic comedy characters are? Females are in the case of this. I mean, they see it as like a trope, but I mean, I never really had a problem with it in general. And some say it's like they criticize it as like one-dimensional, existing only to provide emotional support to the protagonist or to teach them important life lessons while receiving nothing in return. And some people might think that, but honestly, it never really bothered me, because, like I said, that's what pretty much most romantic comedy female characters are in that case. I mean, they're there to be the emotional support to the main character, like give them a reason to go on this journey. And I really had no problem with it whatsoever. I thought Natalie Portman was very good in the film. She and Zach Braff have a lot of great chemistry together, and it really does show in this film. I mean, I think it's a wonderfully, wonderfully made film that really is very well done. It's a movie that may seem too much for people who expect more. It can be a little pretentious at times, but honestly, I thought it did it in more than just enough to really, really get me to really enjoy it as much as I did. I really thought that this was going to be something, when I first saw the trailers, I thought this was going to be something really, really good, and it really blew the expectations that I had for it going into it. I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it the first time around, and how much the film would have an impact on me in terms of how I looked in films in general. This was really my first independent film I really sought out to see, because this was, again, around the time when I was going to see movies on my own, and the chance to see this movie for the first time when it was coming out and really giving me a chance to explore my output in terms of what kind of films I would like. I really found myself really enjoying this film. I think it's a really fantastic film, a visual wonder, great music, a great cast, just a great story to tell, a nice coming-of-age story. I can't recommend this one enough. Garden State is a film that I really do like a lot. Like I said, I can't recommend it enough. Definitely check it out. You will not be disappointed by it. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, Spike Lee's latest film, and that is She Hate Me. I think the trailer pretty much sums up a lot of the problems with the movie that we'll get to in just a little bit here, but this is She Hate Me, the latest film from Spike Lee, where you have Anthony Mackie as a Harvard-educated biotech executive, John Henry Jack Armstrong. I had to check just to make sure that that was actually the full name here, but no, that's the full name. I mean, it's that's what it is on IMDb and what it is on my original review here. But he gets fired when he's informed of his bosses launching an investigation into their business dealings by the Security and Exchange Commission. He's branded as a whistleblower and therefore unemployable, and Jack desperately needs to make a living. His former girlfriend Fatima, played by Kerry Washington, is a high-powered businesswoman and now a lesbian who offers him cash to impregnate her and her new girlfriend Alex. Jack is then persuaded by the chance to make easy money, word spread, and soon Jack is the baby-making business at $10,000 a try. Lesbians with a desire for motherhood and the cash to spare are lining up to seek his services. But between the attempts by his former employees to frame him for security fraud and his dubious fathering activities, Jack finds his life all at once becoming very complicated. Just like the movie itself. I didn't even show you the other half of the trailer where it turns into a courtroom film, a court film. Like, it literally, the film is all over the place, and you have a movie that thinks it's trying to be something deep and thought-provoking, but it really can't decide if it just wants to be that, or as the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes calls it, a sex farce. And even then, the sex stuff isn't even that great in general, but I'll delve into that in just a second. The performances, I think, are what carry the film over to where there is some likability to it. I like Anthony Mackie in here a lot. This was very early in his career, and, you know, given a role like this, I think he does a very good job with the material given to him. I think most of the rest of the cast does a pretty good job with it, but unfortunately the material really isn't as strong as it could be. Back when I wrote my written review for this, I said the sex scenes were pretty effective, but watching it again as of late, I really think that they are not as good as I was thinking that they were before. Plus, if that's really all you came to see the movie for, just go online and look for them. I mean, go to Celebrity Movie Archive and you can easily find the most notable sex scenes in there. And even then, it's not that many. And this guy's pretty much living the dream of a porn actor. Like, you can watch a better version of this storyline done on Pornhub or Xvideos. I won't say that for the reasons that I've actually seen it before. I'm just go with it, okay? But anyway. It seems like Spike Lee just can't really seem to find the right motivation of the story he wants to tell, and I think that's really the biggest problem with the film. It's really hard to feel invested in what's going on if you can't tell what Spike Lee's trying to accomplish here. Because, like I said, sometimes it's a sex farce, sometimes it's a movie about insider trading, sometimes it's a courtroom movie, sometimes it's a movie about betraying the mafia. John Turturro plays a mafia boss in here. Like, so much is going on in this movie, and they can't figure out one single solitary thing to do to keep the movie afloat in general, and they have to have all these really good talents involved in here. Like I said, Anthony Mackie, Kerry Washington, you know, you have Jim Brown in here, John Turturro, Woody Harrelson, Ellen Barkin, Monica Bellucci, Dania Ramirez. I am having trouble talking today. Brian Dennehy, Ossie Davis, Paula Jai Parker, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Bai Ling, you know, a lot of really good talent in this movie, and it's just all over the place on what they're trying to accomplish here. Like, this is a movie that's very similar to something like Girl 6 and Bamboozle, where there are good ideas for a story here, but they don't know what kind of a story they want to tell. It never goes all the way with what they're trying to do. Is it supposed to be a satire of corruption and greed? Is it just an outlet for these sex scenes involving these lesbians? Is it a mafia movie? Is it a movie where you're following this guy's journey to some form of rise to prominence? But it never figures out what it wants to do with it, and it just has this. It's really not helping. That's very padded out too. It's a movie that's over 2 hours long, and it feels like a film that just is all over the place. Kind of like the review that I'm giving you right now, because I'm having trouble putting my words together here, but it feels like an eternity to sit through this movie. And this is a movie where I think Spike Lee is trying to do way too much for his own good, and there are some ideas that could be interesting, some ideas that could work in general, but it's a movie that just falls flat on its face, and it just feels like at times it could be very offensive at times, but not in the way that a good Spike Lee movie should make you feel offended, but a way that's just like, you're really insulting my intelligence type of offensive. Like, this movie is so poorly put together, man. This is just a sloppy film. The things that they promise you don't work as well as they should. Like, yeah, the acting is what carries it to something of watchability, but even then, it's not worth it in the end to really sit through this film. Like, thank God all these actors would go on to do much bigger and better things down the road, because, man, this is just a movie that is such a colossal mess up at so many levels that it makes people like me screw around with my review for this. So, but I digress. She Hate Me, a movie that probably has some good ideas to it in general, but unfortunately, it just cannot live up to those expectations that it has going into it, and it just is a real cluster of a film in general. But luckily for Spike Lee, he would rebound nicely with his next film, and with the help of his good pal Denzel Washington, but we'll get to that when we get to 2006's Inside Man. As far as She Hate Me goes, you'd be better off just avoiding it. God, that last one was a hard one to get through. I don't know what was going on with me in that last review I did, but with that said, thank God this is the end of this episode of Time About the Movies, because I need a break apparently, but we will be back next time with the first few movies of the month of August. Some notable movies, some good, not so good, and some that could be seen as pretty good. But we have Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx in Michael Mann's Collateral. Brittany Murphy in Little Black Book, an infamously bad movie that I got to see, but I'll delve more into that a little bit in the next episode. But we also have the I guess found footage horror film, I guess you could kind of call it, but Open Water. So we'll take a look at those 3 films all in the next episode. So check that out, and I promise you that it will be much better than the way this episode ended. I don't know what the hell happened on that front, but that being said, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, better videos I hope, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off, I need a break, I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care. Good Lord.